Hey guys, what's up? This is Ivan the Past here, and today I'm going to be doing the version 2 of my Gear Chronicle deck. So without further ado, let's just get started with the starting Vanguard. So starting Vanguard is Timepiece Draco Kid, still the same. Great researcher because you really need to hit your grade 3 early, and it helps you get the Stride Fodder off. And honestly, with this deck, if you don't get Chrono Jet, like, you're pretty much screwed, so I feel like he's more useful because there's a lot of ways that your starter can die before you hit GB1. So I feel like it's really useful in Gears because it gives you Soul. The Counter Blast isn't that bad. It's better than Gunner Gear in my opinion because you don't really need to hit lines early. But anyways, it's a pretty solid choice. And then I run, obviously, 4 Chrono Jets for grade 3s. Chrono Jet Dragon, it's a really solid stride card. Honestly, I think it's probably one of the better ones. But when you stride, you counterblast 1, put one of your opponent's rear guards at the bottom of their deck. So, counterblast 1, straight up removal. Well, it's not straight up removal, but it pretty much banishes them away back to their deck. It's pretty cool. And then Generation Break 2. When he attacks, there's no cost associated with this at all. He gets plus 5,000, and then your opponent can't call grade 1s or higher. So it's Glory Maelstrom. Pretty powerful because it can hit over 23 or above, depending on what cards you use. So he's a backup finisher, which is really solid. Helps Gears really close out the game. You'll know what kind of cards your opponent has to guard in their hand. Then I run 2 copies of Fate Wheel. Fate Wheel's okay. He's mainly used in situations where your opponent has a really annoying starting Vanguard, or if you just miss Chrono Jet straight up. And this is usually when you're going first. You counterblast 1, soul blast 1, choose one of their rear guards on ride, and then put it to the bottom of their deck. So it's pretty good. Remove starters, remove grades 1 or less. Then he's also a backup glory. He's a backup Silent Tom. So when he attacks, your opponent can't call grade 0s, which is pretty interesting because that means they're forced to use grade 1s or higher, which is really solid. It's a nice backup. And then 2 copies of Ruin Disposal. Ruin Disposal's Legion skill is not the greatest. When he Legions, you pop one of their rear guards back to the bottom. He also attacks for a number. If you have when you attack a Vanguard, he gets plus 2,000. He Legions with Puseri, which is not too relevant, but it's mainly for deck-out scenarios because they do happen. But it's mainly, again, some more grade 3 fodder generally for Chrono Jet. You don't want to try to extend the game too long, and there's some odd cases where you do need to ride it, but that makes it a little bit better. And then I run 3 copies of Steam Knight Amber. Amber is mainly there as a G. He's mainly more of a tempo card, honestly. Like, if you have a full column with him, which you do want to try to set up a field, this deck is pretty much a tempo deck. Yeah, I think that's actually kind of punny, but yeah. So when he's boosted, you can return one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards to the bottom of their deck. So counterblast 1. This deck's pretty counterblast intensive, but there's a lot of ways to remedy that. So I like Amber because, yeah, I mean, you can just... He's continuous removal. Like, if he stays there, then he can keep throwing things back. I don't run Stand Trigger, so that's not really relevant. Then I run 3 copies of Steam Maiden Ishin. Ishin's a great card. She has Resist, which means that they can't target this. And then she's also a Silent Tom clone, but it's a conditional one. So when one of your opponent's rear guards is put at the bottom of their deck, then you can counterblast 1, and then she gets Silent Tom ability. This might not seem too good at first, because CV1 is kind of expensive when you're already using stuff for removal, but she can really pressure your opponent and just kill them if they don't have PG for this, because they can't call grade 0s. That's pretty brutal. Because you can get her to pretty high numbers, trust me. It gets pretty nasty. And then I run 3 copies of Glimmer Breath Dragon. Glimmer Breath Dragon's counterblast 1, soul blast 1. When you place that on Vanguard, if your Vanguard has Chrono Jet in its name, you can spin one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards, and then he gets plus 2,000 until the end of the turn. This is really useful because it can help you hit numbers if you use it correctly. It's mainly a really good combo with Fate Rider Dragon because you can call this from using a grade 1. It's also just straight up a really good tempo card again. Like, you're just placing a rear guard and then your opponent loses a rear guard. So again, it helps you build good board control. Then I run 2 copies of Poozer Eerie. Poozer Eerie is also a backup Silent Tom. Incidentally, his ability doesn't depend on whether he's in Legion or not, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't really like using him too much, but because the Soul Blast is actually an issue. But he's also a good backup finisher. He does the same thing as Ishin. It's also a Legion mate, so you can really, if you ever have to play a deck out game, then you still have a backup. It's pretty nice. So that's about it for grade 2s. It's a very nice mixed lineup, honestly. Gears are a really techy kind of deck, so it works out pretty well for itself. And then I run 4 copies of Steam Maiden Arlem. Arlem's the unflipping perfect card. You need 4, honestly, because you just need to unflip your damage. It doesn't really matter that you have to protect rear guards in this deck. You really need the PGGs. So there's no questions asked in this deck. And then I run 2 copies of Mistgazer. Mistgazer is a pretty funny card. When your opponent's rear guards put at the bottom of the deck, if you're at GB1, it gets plus 5,000. Absolutely disgusting with Upheaval Pegasus. If they have a full field, then they're pretty much going to get screwed over pretty easily, because he can get 35,000. You stack that on with like an Ishin or Poozer, they're pretty screwed because they need to PG or already die. I love those cards, the ones where you PG or you die. Ragnarok is such a card. And then I run 1 copy of Summon Gear Crestwolf. I didn't want to play free Mistgazers because as good as Mistgazer is, you don't want to play too many 6k grade 1s. It's not a good idea because you really need the 16k columns. But Gearwolf is a good backup card. It does almost the same thing, but it only gets plus 3,000 for 7k stat line. It works pretty well. Yeah, it's a pretty good card. It works well with Glimmer Breath because then it makes a 21 column. It's pretty solid. And then I run 3 copies of Steam Fighter Meshi. Meshi is when once per turn when he's on rearguard and you're at GB1. When one of your opponent's rearguard is put at the bottom of the deck, you can Soul Blast 1. Well, it's put into deck, not at the bottom, which might become quite interesting. But anyways, when that happens, you can Soul Blast 1, you can choose 1 card in your damage zone, unflip it. Makes Soul a resource, but it lets you really be able to counterblast a lot more, which you want to be able to counterblast as freely as possible. You want to really control their board and just be able to pressure them whenever possible. And then 4 copies of Steam Breath Dragon. Steam Breath is the Stride Enabler. I'm not going to explain what it does because it's pretty straightforward by now. It's worth grade 3, and then he can help you search out Chrono Jet if you already have a grade 3 when you place on a rearguard. So that's almost done for the main deck. So I run 3 copies of Lucky Pot Drago Kid. Soul Charge, plus 3 to something. It can help you make numbers, and gives you soul for Meshi, Glimmer Breath, all that good stuff. So, and then I run 4 copies of Heart Thump Worker. Heart Thump Worker, yeah. I can totally pronounce things. When your attack and your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater with Chronogen in its name, then you can pay cost and give your Vanguard plus 5, and then you can draw a card. So pretty good. Helps you. It's really useful late game because you can just pump Chrono Jet, or you can use it as an early game tool to like be able to swap out your hand for some more useful stuff. So it's a great utility card, and I mean double rare crit trigger. Like why not, right? 7 foil triggers. I like that. And then I run another 7 crits. I run obviously multiple, so my opponent has a harder time counting my triggers. 9 crit because you want the draw power because you don't have a real good like draw engine, but 9 crits like really pressures your opponent really hard. It's not common that you double or triple crit people because of that. And then 4 heal triggers because Uluru is best, and also because heals. You need the heal triggers. So that's it for the main deck. Stride deck. I'm gonna start with the pretty obvious stuff. You're gonna run 4 copies of Ragnarok because Ragnarok is one of those cards where you perfect guard it or you die. So basically, you counterblast 1 Persona on a flip. Opponent can't call grade 0s, and then if there's 2 or more face up, then they have to. He gets a +1 crit. So pretty much, it's a game ender if you know your opponent has run out of perfect guards or doesn't have one, or very unlikely doesn't have one, or you can just bait out their perfect guards nonetheless. So Ragnarok is a piece of crap. I mean that in the good way. Like he just straight up kills people. It's almost unfair. Like if they don't have perfect guard, then they're screwed. And then I run one copy of Upheaval Pegasus. You only ever need to use them once in the game, honestly. Because you just want to screw up their board once, and then it's not always good in a lot of matchups, so you should always be careful when you're using him. But if you bounce up an entire board, then, like I mentioned previously, Mistgazer gets absolutely massive. Huge gains, man. And then, yeah, it just straight up kills people. I love cards that kill people. It messes up their whole board. You can potentially... It actually, like, anti-fins their deck, because it puts, like, non-triggers back in, and then potentially calls triggers back out. So it's really good. I say everything's good, but it's really the truth. And then I run one copy of Lost Age Dragon. Lost Age is an on-hit, you bounce one of their rear guards. So... it's honestly more used in a scenario where your opponent doesn't have a huge board. He's usually a really good first stride, so I love striding him first. But there are cases where he's not good. But just the on-hit pressure, it baits out the PGs. So, yeah, it works itself out, honestly. And then, honestly, one of the stars in the deck, Fate Rider Dragon. Fate Rider Dragon's like... I feel like he's just really, like... unpopular, just... like, people don't like him for some reason, but I feel like he's just such a great card. Like, so once per turn, you put one of your riggers at the bottom, and then you search for something that's one grade higher. Use a period call out to rearguard, and then you choose units up for each face-up card in your G zone, and they get plus 3,000. Well, basically what this means is that you can pump columns for 6k, but do you remember that we have a freaking... Silent Tom clone? Where is she? We have 2 Silent Tom clones. So, like, you can just get the setup correctly, and then, bam, they're pretty much gonna get wrecked by Ishin. So, Fate Rider is an excellent late game card. I use them, like, around the mid game, honestly. You can use them first, as a first stride, too. It's just really great utility overall. Like, if your field is kind of crap, or you have a timepiece still there, then you can just bounce timepiece, get a Meshi out, and then you're pretty much set for life. So, how I feel about this deck, I think I've mentioned the main issue with it is that if you miss Chrono Jet, like, your life sucks. And also, if you don't get Meshis, it also sucks. So, it's honestly a harder deck than it seems to play. Like, I know it seems like really autopilot, like, herder, let's, like, guard break them, and then they die. Like, I just stride Chrono Jet. I stride back the clock, they die. But, like, it honestly takes a lot of more thinking than it seems to actually play this deck properly. It's not that it's hard to play, it's just you really need to get a proper board set up. You need to know what targets you want to bounce back. You want to know when to stride and when to actually just use Chrono Jet. You have to memorize their hand. It's the reason why I think, like, Gear Chronicle doesn't top a lot is because a lot of people, like, it's a lot of new players that actually play it. And... I don't know, like, I feel like it's a really solid deck, but right now, the only problem with it is if you don't get Chrono Jet, like, you're 100% screwed. Well, not 100%, but, like, you better get him soon, because then you're dead. But I'm going to probably release, like, a version 3 of this deck when G-Set 4 drops, so, yeah. I really do enjoy playing this deck. It's pretty funny, because I got this deck back, that I originally sold this deck around... right after G-Set 1 came out, and I did the first version. But then I managed to get it back because it traded to a few people, and then it bounced back to me. So, yeah, that's about it for this deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm looking forward to the G-Set 4 support for this. It's a fun deck. Yeah, it kind of is fun. Because there's a lot of stuff you can do, and a lot of thinking involved, which is my kind of deck, actually. So, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.